One of, if not perhaps my favorite novella of all time, is A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L Peck. This very, very small book has taken up a very large amount of my headspace ever since I first read it several years ago. As recently as a couple days ago, I was lying in bed at night thinking about this book, running through the scenario in my mind. The story of this man who is sent to hell, where his personal hell is a library full of books that are all 400 pages long, where every single letter is randomized. Every book that is possible is in this library, and he is allowed to leave hell and go to heaven when he finds the book that accurately, without any mistakes, describes his life story. It's the existential dread of this task and in this book that sticks with me so much, where after you start thinking about it a bit, you realize the sort of monumental task that is ahead of him. And the fact that it isn't impossible, the fact that it is 100% a possible task, just a very, 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 very long one, makes it so much worse. And I tell you all this, I explain this book, one, because if you haven't read it already, I think you should go read it. Link in the description, go buy it, go read it, I love it. But two, I have been chasing that high, that level of sort of existential dread, that level of psychological horror, that level of almost existential pessimism. I've been chasing that ever since I finished this book, and I have often looked on Reddit, looked on Goodreads, hell, even looked on Facebook for recommendations of books that are similar to A Short Stay in Hell. And today I want to talk to you about three of them. The three books I read are The Divine Farce by Michael Graziano, I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, and Cudigra by Sophia Ajram. Let's just jump right in with the first one, A Divine Farce by Michael Graziano. This is a story about a man who is stuck in a concrete tube with two other people. They are naked, it is dark, they are crushed so close together that the man can't even sit down. They are pressed up against one another. Food comes in the form of a sweet nectar that runs down the walls and drips from a grate above them. Waste is taken away by a grate below them. And for as long as they seem to be able to remember, this has been their existence. Until one day, when one of the characters finds a very small, minute imperfection in the wall of their tube. What follows is a story of exploration, a story of existentialism, a touch of absurdism, a pretty heavy-handed allegory for life. Is this heaven? Is this hell? Does that matter? Is this just life? Does it have a greater meaning? If so, what is it? If not, then what are we doing? And it was pretty aggressively fine. It falls short in a lot of places where A Short Stay in Hell shines, and it never quite reaches any of the high points that that book does. For example, A Short Stay in Hell's main character is very, very well done, and the supporting cast of characters are also like perfectly adequate characters who serve their role very well in the story, clearly have roles, goals, ambitions, and all that. Whereas A Divine Farce really has one character, and that one character really falls very flat for me, with the rest of the cast being this sort of emotionless, faceless nothingness. And without spoiling anything, because it's a quick read, you should probably go read it for yourself, I find that the main plot points aren't adequately explored. I find the idea that our main character is the only one that seems to have any agency, any goals, any ambitions, any thought, any self-reflection, any self-identity to be really puzzling and not explored enough at all. It is a very short read. It is interesting in concept. The formatting of the actual book itself, there is a border around every page, at least in the copy I read, which sort of expands and changes as we go through the story. That is all interesting. It did leave me with some questions about what was going on, but like with a lot of books like this, it doesn't go out of its way to answer any of them, and it also doesn't really leave you with enough clues to come up with your own answers, I don't think. And overall, I was kind of disappointed. It's going to get a 6 out of 10 for me. Check it out. Overall, fine. Up next, I read Cudigra by Sophia Ajram. And when I say I read Cudigra, I really mean I tried to read Cudigra. I don't DNF books often. I think this is the second DNF this year, but I just couldn't get too far in it. This is a story about a young man who has decided to end his life, and he's going to do so by throwing himself into a river. We pick up the story as he is on the subway on the way to a station near the river where he wants to throw himself in, and he ends up finding himself in a sort of never-ending labyrinthian sort of subway station, clearly some sort of purgatory for people who are thinking of ending their lives. And I didn't get too very deep into it for several reasons. First off, our main character is incredibly woe is me. No sort of nuance there so far from what I've read. Again, I haven't read very far, but he came off as very woe is me, the world is dark, in a way that just felt sort of like edgy teenager. But really, the heart of the problem is the book feels like it was co-authored by an incredibly overly verbose thesaurus. Nothing is said simply that couldn't be overwritten. It is perhaps the most overwritten book I've ever tried to read. It seems to follow the mantra of why use 5 words when 25 words will do, and also all 25 words should be very long, very obscure, and kind of not really fit very well. Every sentence feels overwritten, and with most of them requiring me to double back after I've finished the sentence because it wasn't clear what tense we were in, what the subject of the sentence was in, until the very end, and that changed the entire reading of the sentence. It was laborious. It was just so tiring. Then finally we get to the part of the book that I'm interested in, the part of the book where we're stuck in the giant labyrinthian subway station. That's the bit I'm interested in. We finally get there, and I'm just going to read a few passages right now to kind of get at where I'm coming from. So I'll set the scene. We've gotten off the train, we've crossed into a few hallways, found more hallways, and then we find this. But no, at the end is something else entirely. At first, I don't see the necessity for such complex geometry. It seems to violate the laws of physics and bend the laws of nature. It is insurmountably large, a gargantuan organ that possesses the verticality of a tower. Every bit of it seems made of concrete, that subtle wash of slate grey, dark and sovereign. There are snapshots of other material, the cut of stainless steel banisters, gently wafting empty escalators sweeping up 3 stories past the point of converging lines telescoping in on themselves before disappearing, acrylic sheets covering tiled ads for a Thai food restaurant, 2 bobble-headed faces with chattering marionette teeth and 2 wide eyes girdling an Oktoberfest special. Their faces not quite right, as though processed ineffectively by some artificial mechanism. There is a row of 8 STM-branded turnstiles and an empty control kiosk emanating a jaundiced bioluminescence. The light is of a place once visited in a dream as a child. To me, it is wildly disorientating. Protrusions and overhangs make it impossible to see around certain edges, hiding things in shadows, opening perhaps doorways and crawl spaces. And as I step forward, I find myself questioning just how much of it is accessible, how much of it is decorative. And that doesn't mean anything. Like, I have no concept at all of what we're looking at, right? Like, are we looking at like a tower of escalators, or is it a big open room around the outside? What even is happening right now? And then the bit that really just made me put it down, the bit that was a bit too much for me, is this is our main character's immediate thoughts. Like, we've seen whatever it is that's just been inadequately, in my opinion, described to us. He's just realized he's somewhere weird, somewhere like eldritch in nature, something weird's going on. And his first thought is this. It gradually dawns on me that I've been denied a destination, caught in a transitional environment, a space between beginnings and an end. What I see towers benedictive above my head and is certainly not ℙ𝕚𝕚𝕚𝕚 terminus. I know this now. Here stands a structure whose purpose was made for people, a space with very clear intention, deserted, forgotten. It's weird, I think. I don't know. A space for travellers, void of such motion. And I cannot dispose of such perverse emptiness. That's not how people think. No one in the world presented with this situation thinks that. Like, it's just overwritten for the sake of overwritten. It feels like handing in an assignment in high school where you were struggling to hit the word count, and so you made all the words really long, you put more of them in, you made the font big, you made the spacing big. And it's just, I found it almost unreadable. I know a lot of people are going to like this book. There was apparently a very interesting choose-your-own-adventure sort of thing going on near the end, so there isn't even actually just one ending, which I don't know how I feel about that, having not experienced it, but having no indication of that on the cover or on the blurb, I feel like I would have found it a negative when I got to that stage. It feels a bit gimmicky. Overall, I don't like DNFing books, especially ones this short, but this short book, of which I read like 35, 45 pages, was just incomprehensible. And so it was a DNF out of 10. Finally, I read I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman, and thank God, this was the best book of the 3 that I read. This is a story about a young woman who has grown up inside of a cage with 39 other women. All the other women are middle-aged. This one, our main character, is just coming into adulthood. She has lived her entire life as far as she can remember in this cage. None of the women in the cage remember how they got there exactly. They all have vague recollections of some sort of apocalypse, some sort of disaster, something happening, and then they've been living in the cage They don't even really quite remember waking up in the cage. They don't quite remember getting into this routine. They just remember living in the cage. Their only contact with the outside world is the guards that patrol the outside of the cage. These men, young men, old men, patrol the outside of the cage, never speaking, never communicating, barely even looking at these women, only interacting with them when they break one of the many rules. The women aren't allowed to touch each other. The women aren't allowed to hurt each other, hurt themselves. They have to eat when they're told. They have to sleep when they're told. And when they break these rules, the guards use their whips to punish them, to the point where the women are now very cowed. The women are very set in their ways and don't break the rules. The story really focuses on themes of isolation, of identity. Not only are these women isolated from the outside world, our main character is very isolated from the women themselves, being the only young woman here, having grown up without the touch of other people. It explores society, it explores gender, it explores identity. It explores the idea of survival and exploration. It is an exploration of the struggle, of the hopelessness, of, again, existential dread of a task that is impossible, of a task that seems Herculean, and living in a world where the answers to your questions almost certainly cannot be found. I really, really liked this book. I thought the characters were great. I thought the plot was really good. I thought the existential horror kind of stuff that's going on here was excellent. I'm a little bit let down by the main narrative, that it doesn't kind of lead anywhere. It doesn't really give you the answers you're looking for. Don't go into this book hoping that by the end things will be explained. I was a little let down by some of not the actions of our main character, but the things our main character didn't do, which even in the narrative, the main character laments not doing those things, which I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Overall, the story does kind of meander a bit, but I genuinely think that that is the point. So that's forgivable. Overall, this one gets an 8 out of 10 from me, and a definite recommendation. It's definitely worth reading. Again, a very short book, but also it is a bingo book. This one's a bit of a stretch, but most of the people on the bingo thing seem to agree. This fits the high fashion square, which says, read a book where clothing or fashion or fiber arts are important to the plot, with the hard mode being the main character makes clothes or fibers. A fairly main part of this book is that the women don't have, wool. They're provided very small amounts of cloth, and they must make do with them as they do. Their clothes deteriorate and break, and so they end up sewing with woven together hair just to keep their clothes going, to make new clothes and whatnot. And our main character has a very important part to play in that by the end of the book. And so I think it fits. I'm going to put that one in. Overall, not too bad. I read 3 books, one of which was fine. Overall, a bit of a Goldilocks video. There were 3 books. One was not good enough. One was very good, and one was just fine. That's not the takeaway from Goldilocks, is it? Anyway, they're books, not bears. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you have any suggestions that are like A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L Peck, then please leave them in the description below. I love those sort of books. If you want to pick up any of the books I talked about today, I would highly recommend you pick up 2 of them. And one of them was fine, and I don't know, maybe skip Cudigra. There will be links for all of them in the description below, but most of all, please just keep reading and let me know what you've read. Thank you so much, everyone. Ciao.